Hello, this is Off Leash with Eric Prince. I'm Mark Serrano. We have lost a legend. A giant has fallen. His name was Bernard Kerik, the 40th Commissioner of the New York City Police Department, a man who heroically led America out of the 9/11 terrorist attack tragedy, a man who worked with Mayor Rudolph Giuliani to bring crime down to historic lows in New York City and had a tremendous, tremendous impact on America, on policing in America, and on the lives of yours truly, as well as Eric, because Bernie was a dear friend to each of us. Eric, just a tremendous, tremendous loss of a great leader and a really, really good friend to you and me.
Yeah, his funeral, I was honored to attend, and seeing the NYPD turn out by the hundreds and hundreds in blues was beautiful and a fitting tribute to a warrior's funeral. Hearing Mayor Giuliani talk about Bernie the night before and how he had murder reduced by 65% under Bernie as the police commissioner. And he really did lead from the front, because Rudy talked about 5 different times that Bernie went out as the commissioner and made arrests, including on a guy that was wanted from Virginia for multiple murders. It was both Rudy and the head of Bernie's protective detail, this huge black dude, 6'6", who said, when Bernie said, "No, we're not heading home, we're heading out on patrol. We're going to go find this guy." And sure enough, they did. And Bernie put the cuffs on him. And he did that soon after becoming commissioner because he wanted to show that he was one of the guys and he was leading from the front. And it was an inspiring bit of leadership to hear about that. Hearing Bernie's son, who's also a police officer now, speak of the focus and the discipline and how they understood that they just didn't see a lot of their dad for a couple of years after 9/11 because he had so many loose ends to tie up, from the recovery, the salvage, the burials. He attended all the funerals of every police officer lost. He was a cop's cop, and an effective in as the bureau, the head of New York prisons as well. And he likely, if he was still with us, I think he was going to be named to the Bureau of Prisons in the United States. So Bernie got targeted. Why? Because Rudy Giuliani was going to run for president, and Bernie was associated with Rudy. So the deep state, the left, went after him and got him on some for employing a nanny and not paying taxes on her or something. And Bernie went to prison and came out of it a better man, not a bitter man. And pardoned by the president, by Trump, and went on to do great things again. So he was just resilient, and he took his hits in life and just kept moving forward. And he loved this country. He died a patriot, and we should all be we should all be wanting as many people knowing he was a patriot. We should go to our deaths as proud as he could have.
Yeah, for sure. And that was a really special dinner the night before his funeral in New York City that we attended together. Had some of his great friends, Rudolph Giuliani. Craig Taylor is the head of Bernie's security detail on 9/11 that you were referencing just now. There was a James Doyle from Georgia and Dan Newlin, just a great supporter of Bernie and his family. AJ Albano. I mean, so many great people were there, and it was really special opportunity for us to reflect, tell some great stories, led, of course, by Mayor Giuliani. And I had a chance to get an article, bylined article published last week in Breitbart, where I talked about my friendship with Bernie and what it meant to me and what he's done for me. I'll tell you a quick story. My dad died in 2018. He was 89 years old. He had fallen ill for a while, so it was really his time to go. And my dad and Bernie had sort of a similar trajectory. They were both high school dropouts, later earned their GED, served in the U.S. Army, and then became New York City cops. So my dad was a cop for 10 years, well before I was born. He served as a beat cop and then was mounted in the mounted division on a horse in New York City, and served for 10 years. My parents started having a lot of kids, so he couldn't survive on a cop salary back in that time. So when my dad died, Bernie called me up and he said, "Hey, what was your dad's shield number as a cop in New York City?" I said, "Oh, it was badge number 9177." He said, "Okay," and I didn't think anything of it. Week later, the memorial takes place in February of 2018 in New Jersey. There was a massive, massive winter storm. Telephone poles were down, trees were down all over North Jersey. And the morning of the service, we had to move it from the funeral home to the firehouse because the firehouse had a generator. And there's Bernie, shows up before the service to present to my mother a replica New York City shield, a badge with number 9177 on it. It was from that day forward that we were bonded for life, and became very close and did a lot of business together. Look, he was a legend. He cleaned up New York City. He served as a provisional minister in the provisional Iraqi government in the U.S. after the fall of Saddam, as you recall, before he was nominated for Homeland Security by Bush. He also did a lot of work in the Middle East, Eric, as you well know. He consulted, for instance, for the King of Jordan for several years, helped build their biggest prison there, and set up sort of a national police force across the country. So he really understood the Middle East and Mideast security policy as well.
Yeah, a year ago, about right now, I got a call from Steve Bannon, and he said, "I have to report to a prison on the 1st of July. Could you and Bernie Kerik please come and walk me to the front gate?" And I'd never had that kind of request before. Maybe walk some kids to their first day of school, but never a friend to his first day in prison. And I will never forget that as long as I live, because we walked Steve through the gate into the first locked up gate area of the prison. And we go inside, and there's a lieutenant standing behind the desk, and he pops to attention. He says, "Good morning, Commissioner Kerik," because he was a former NYPD cop. So at that point, we knew Steve would be in good hands.
Yeah, Maureen Bannon was sitting with me at the luncheon after the funeral, and she told me about that story. I remember you talking about it. Bernie told me all about it. And, because Bernie, keep in mind, Bernie, paid probably a greater price than any American targeted for politics, because he served 3 full years. And, God bless Steve Bannon, Peter Navarro. Those guys both served 4 months in prison last year. Bernie served out 3 years in prison. And later, years later, he helped the Trump White House, the first Trump White House, pass the First Step Act, prison reform, working with the White House to pass it, received the pardon from President Trump. And then Bernie and I worked on the investigations of the 2020 elections. I set up a war room. He led teams across the country for Giuliani, investigating what actually took place on the ground in these key swing states and districts, right after the 2020 election. And, he genuinely saw, he pulled up the details and the investigative material. He found the evidence of the corruption that took place in that election and was subpoenaed by the January 6th committee. But his very, very skillful attorney was able to challenge the legitimacy of the January 6th committee and instead set up what turned out to be a 9-hour interview, not under oath. So Bernie was a loyalist to President Trump, served him all the way through the 2024 election, campaigning very, very hard for him. And he played these various roles that I think are going to be unique in American history. And he was the guy who should have been there with you and Steve Bannon, based on his background, to see Steve off for his stint in prison for 4 months. You're right.
Yeah, Bernie was he's the kind of guy that just kept showing up. He took the hits and kept moving forward, and it's inspiring. So rest in peace, Bernie.
I'll tell you. Yeah, rest in peace. And I got to tell you, the other thing I said in this article last week was, when you first met him, he was very guarded, very untrusting. Naturally, like who wouldn't be after what he's experienced in life? But once you got to know him on a personal level, What a great storyteller. What a great sense of humor. What a life. If anybody has lived a life of achievement and honor, it's Bernard Kerik. And man, was I lucky to know him.
Well, yes, when I first met Bernie, it was in Iraq, where we were actually all literally guarded with guns everywhere and body armor. So you get through the formalities quickly that way.
Indeed. Well, I'm really glad we could take this time on Off Leash to honor a legend, our really, really good friend, Bernie Kerik. He's really going to be missed. So thanks for sharing your thoughts and memories of Bernie here, Eric.
Wouldn't have been anywhere else.
That's it for us today on Off Leash with Eric Prince. I'm Mark Serrano. Until next time.